Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of the Undiscovered Metric. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Thomas Hirschmann, the CEO at CoreCortex. At CoreCortex, Thomas leads a team of data scientists and AI experts delivering AI-powered innovation as a service. He is a trained behavioral scientist with over 15 years' experience in digital analytics, marketing, and innovation, and a veteran of the marketing and advertising industry. Today, we are talking all things AI, Gen AI, and the technologies that marketers are now implementing into their plans. Just before we kick off, Thomas, I really want to get your thoughts on whether AI is worth all the hype or is something that is just another technology that marketers are going to introduce and use for the next couple of years before it fades away.
Hi, JJ. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm really excited and enjoying conversations with you a lot. So we will have a lot of fun over the next 30 minutes, I'm sure of that. To jump into answering your question straight away, so I think generally, yes, there is deserved hype about AI, but probably not in the way that most people would think it is deserved. Because I see, on my perspective, and this is obviously my humble opinion only, my perspective is that most people focus on the wrong aspects. They focus only on the superficial technological advancements that we can see. Wow, there's a greater model coming up. Now there's a faster model coming up. Now we can see more tools that produce video. Soon we will have more multimodal experiences. So all of that, I think, is really just scratching, or not even scratching the surface of what we will be seeing in the future.
One of the things that I see is that the Gen AI tools, Bard, Copilot, Sora, ChatGPT, at the moment, it seems a little bit like when the App Store launched. Brands are jumping into it, saying we need to be using this, just as they were when they were building apps. But they didn't actually take that step back and think, okay, what are we trying to achieve by this? How are we going to use it? How are we going to measure it? And why? What's the business purpose for this? It was a little bit like Tom's painted his house, so I've got to paint my house to match it and jump in with everyone else, rather than taking that step back. Is that something you've seen, and is that something that you're seeing as a disadvantage for those that have just jumped in? People need to take a step back, like anything, create the strategy and then use those tools.
Yeah, I think it's a great point that you're making, and strategy is something that is more than ever in dire need to create the actual value that you are able or can get out of this technology. So in short, I'm seeing that a lot, specifically with clients that are a bit overwhelmed or uncertain about the technology. They kind of think that the tool is the technology. Right. So instead of rethinking the way that they're doing business and understanding the transformative, the full potential of the transformative changes that are happening, they're basically looking for shortcuts. And that has always been a problem. Right. There's a general principle that people over expect the impact of a new technology in the short term and under expect in the long run, right? So to make that a bit more clear, what I mean by that, when Amazon started to sell the first books on the internet, everyone was like, oh yeah, well, the internet is going to be amazing, but whatever, I don't really think that e-commerce is going to be such a big thing, right? And then kind of fast forward 10 years, of course, it's a big thing, and it's ubiquitous, right? There's a fantastic article out there that just came out recently on NFX. It's a blog, and it's talking about the fact that AI is like water. And I had to think about the same thing happening with digital, right? Well, I have, my career kind of started when digital took off, and everyone was like, oh my God, digital this, digital that, digital transformation, blah, blah, blah. What does it actually mean, digital, right? I mean, once everyone has adopted it as a baseline of doing business, it's the absolute standard and normal. And the same thing will happen with AI. So, and then take two things in addition is the shit in, shit out principle, and is the mediocrity principle, meaning that most people will reduce their own work value by not thinking creatively enough about what they could be doing, and they just think about what AI will help them automate in their own workflows. And I think that's the key problem that I can see at this point in time. That is a very, very uncreative way of dealing with this technology.
It reminds me of a phrase that I had a long time ago, that when a shortcut is easy, it just becomes the way. And it seems going to be that's going to be the use case for Gen AI. One of the things we talked about that it would be great for you to expand on again is how Gen AI actually changed the way that you were thinking about solving a problem based on a hypothesis that you had. And actually, while you were prompting Gen AI to solve a specific problem for your business, when you went away and thought about it, actually, that prompted you to change your hypothesis. So,
yes,
is it going to be that actually Gen AI it's not just content creation in a way of I put in a prompt, it's actually prompting the user in a symbiotic way to generate better content and work. If you hypothesis.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think using AI just for generating lots of meaningful text or visuals or video, whatever it is the worst and most, the most stupid way of using generative AI. So if anything, if you're a reflective person, if you're reasonable, if you're someone who thinks about how to work with technology in the right way to get some value out of it, the best way is really kind of, it allows you to focus on the value that you can add and supercharge that value in every interaction. Because of course we can create more output, but if your hypothesis is bad, the output will be bad. Back to what I said earlier, shit in, shit out. That is kind of more true than ever. Now that you have, all these systems, you can also use them much more intelligently and creatively. For example, one of the first ideas that I explored with prompting is to reverse the process, and I set something up is called counter prompt AI, which is basically allowing you to reflect on the quality of your hypothesis in a Socratic manner, right? Like Socrates basically scrutinizing and questioning everything, about his own knowledge. And this is the way forward for us to do proper research and to be actually innovative, not to just come out with more very mainstream, same looking, same sounding kind of generic output. Generic really in the sense of it is what generative AI does when you give it stupid prompts, right?
So with that in mind, when it comes to analyzing data, if you are adhering to the principle of shit in, shit out, and you've got those strong data foundations, you've got strong data sort of maturity within your organization, do you expect that the generative AI tools will help unlock hidden insights or insights that you just wouldn't get if you were doing this manually? Or is it a natural evolution of it will point you in the right direction, but you still need that human interpretation as well?
I would very much assume that we will see a massive stratification effect. What do I mean by that? I mean, in the same way that we already seen big differences in data literacy and digital literacy, we will see an emerging new gap in terms of AI literacy, and AI literacy not in the sense of I know a tool, but really I know how to work with that tool. Having worked in data and in digital marketing and in in advertising, specifically when it comes to performance advertising, right? So many big brands, businesses, and even advertising companies, they try to optimize, apologies for that, the fuck out of efficiency, right?
Yeah.
The problem is when everyone's doing the same thing, you will be hardly in any way effective. You will not reach anyone anymore because everything looks the same, everything feels the same, and you're even doing the same thing on the same platforms. Now, how do you expect any audience to even pay attention to what you're doing, right?
When we look at data, and one of the research projects we did a couple of years ago was one of the biggest problems with manual data wrangling is the number of human errors that we have.
Mm-hmm.
AI tools should solve that. They should solve the getting rid of human errors by analyzing all of your data, depending on whether you've got the strong data foundations that we mentioned. Is there a problem then that we've moved into a societal way of thinking that the computer is always right? Because it's done by a computer, because it's done by a program, it has to be correct. You still need that human interaction and that human step to question and query.
Well, this is really fantastic, and I am so glad, and I'm really grateful that you give me the opportunity to kind of dig deeper into that question of, is intelligence about being right, or is it, maybe more and involving other aspects of kind of cognitive skills as well. So I think, yes, we humans, we make mistakes. There's human error, absolutely, and it can be absolutely critical and deadly, right? Like if you are, a surgeon, if you're flying a plane, if you are a police officer and you're discharging your weapon and you make a mistake, yeah, it can end badly, right? On the other hand, I think the way that our human brain has evolved and is set up is is specifically not, it has not evolved in any way to be like a computer. And for so many reasons, from a brain architecture point of view, like it is the comparison between in silico intelligence and wet intelligence, as the stuff that we have in our skull, is completely different, right? So I would even go one step further and say hallucinations and imagination, they are actually necessary. So in a way, when we complain that ChatGPT hallucinates or any large language model hallucinates, I think we are overlooking the most amazing feature. It's not a glitch or a mistake or a bug in the system. It is that what our own intelligence makes us most powerful to imagine a future that is different from our current existence, imagine things that are still not possible, and find a technical way to get there. Now, of course, you need to figure out where you're wrong and correct your mistakes to finally correct technological problems. But if you think about mathematically being correct, if that is really your only concern, then you're even contradicting mathematicians. Because if you look into what Gödel has come up from a point of view of systems architecture, right? So in his second theorem, he has proven that there is no complex system that is at the same time coherent and complete. And if you understand this second Gödel principle, which is mathematically proven, you also understand that correctness is not the only function of mathematics or intelligence in any way.
And then to take that one step further into a marketing point of view, if you get rid of that imagination, nothing stands out. You can't
Exactly.
ultimately can't be a brand or do advertising, and it is just all the same.
Then you can effectively stop. If you think that, just continuing your brand guidelines using ChatGPT with some kind of automated posting function on social platforms, that is marketing, then you should shoot yourself, right? Then because your job has stopped.
I would just love to dive into the results of marketing and how these tools can help that. As you say, is it the pattern anomaly of going, oh, well, actually, that campaign where we went really out there is an outlier? And is it the speed that these AI tools are going to be able to highlight those sort of outliers of whether something is working or not working? Does it also mean then that marketers can pivot more quickly? If they're getting the results instantaneously, are they able to react a lot better and react a lot faster than necessarily they were? You think even 15 years ago, Nielsen TV data would be 3 months afterwards. You'd be running a
Yeah.
campaign and waiting for America's families to see the adverts they're watching. Every
Well, technically, yes. I think you're right. You would be able to respond and to interact faster. But there's one limiting factor. The market that you're talking to, the audience that you're trying to address, we are still human, right? And if you want a human to make a purchase decision, he needs to be moved or convinced somehow. He needs to make an active decision, a cognitive change needs to happen. And that doesn't happen, that never happens at the speed at which kind of AI can, interact with various different other systems. So to go back to the same mistake that our marketers make with not differentiating between efficiency and effectiveness, they also don't understand that they need to empathize with the audience out there, trying to get in their heads to understand what they really want and need. And only then do they have a chance to positively affect a purchase decision. And that only that is relevant. That is the root cause for the existence of marketing in the first place, right? And you can obfuscate that in a lot of different ways where you say like, well, we have given up on marketing ever being effective, or that's not our job, that's the job of sales. But in the end, I think that's all. That's all. It's just a different way of saying you want to avoid being responsible for results. And I think, specifically in the time of AI, marketers can't afford to not being responsible anymore because technical systems can't be responsible. It needs humans.
So the $1 million question is, how do we measure that empathetic response? What are the metrics that moving forward we should be looking to? As an industry, we've been obsessed with engagement rate, clicks, video views, stuff like that, but that doesn't necessarily generate that empathetic response. So is there a way with these AI tools of potentially coming up with a new model or coming up with new metrics that we weren't able to measure previously?
I think there's two sides to answer your question, or there's two ways in which I could answer that. There's one where we could just hope on further technological progress, right? For example, in the AI conference that I organized with Kent University and Amazon last year, there was an entrepreneur coming up with a brilliant idea to use magnetic brain data to tap into better understanding how we make decisions, right? So you basically will see more devices coming up that read out your EEG data, various different other kind of aspects of decision making to give us a clearer understanding of what are the antecedents and what are the correlates of our behavior, right? And when that comes up, I'm pretty sure that the big tech companies will jump on it, and advertising giants will jump on that too. But there's a much easier, more human way of finding metrics that are relevant as well. So already 10 years ago, at the beginning of my career, I worked with people in innovation, and there was a designer, for example, that was responsible for creating the UX or the visual appearance of anything that we came up with as an innovation concept. And he said, and I remember that very well, good design always needs to polarize. So if it doesn't elicit an emotional response that either makes you say, "Woohoo, this is fucking great," sorry, I swear again, or it makes you say, "This is horrible, I really hate it," right? Then you risk being irrelevant.
Actually, one of the ways that we can implement this AI technology to look at the data is actually find the patterns between the peaks and troughs. And what's the difference between that, as you say, eliciting positive reaction to negative reaction, and then understanding the causality of that, rather than it just having and I'm sure you've seen these throughout your career, the spreadsheets of engagement rate was 70%, then it was 68%, then it was 64%, then it was like, do you see what I mean? Where the percentage points are so
Absolutely.
that actually that should be the metric we're looking at, is the response, the positive or negative response, and the gap between them, to understand why, which is a really interesting metric. Is there anything that you feel that the AI technology is going to open up when it comes to metrics and understanding metrics a little bit more? Obviously, there has been an evolution. We've gone from written reports through to getting everything in a spreadsheet, through to downloading data directly from the platform into visualization and dashboards. Is there a next step in a way that we can open up that understanding and use of metrics, especially within marketing, with the open AI and Gen AI tools?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And I obviously extrapolate into the future from what I've been doing in the area of analytics and using dashboards. And I do see something happening that I was able to have the first vision for it or glimpse for it already 10 years ago. And at that point, interestingly, I got in touch with you guys and was very lucky to be able to use your dashboards to help clients in the UK consumer sector. But I also had a client, I think I might be able to speak about that client freely now. It was a fashion label called Chanel that a lot of people might know. And already back then, we talked about creating an analytics dashboard that is completely interactive in the way that you can ask it questions, and it will give you a natural language formatted response. But not only that, that you can maybe pre-prompt or pre-analyze the data that you have in that dashboard in a way that it asks intelligent questions, based on hypotheses of, like, for example, something like, what if I would kind of use my budget differently? Or can you imagine if I would have used different creatives as assets? Or extrapolating from the different results that I got from this 10 campaigns that I ran across these platforms, can you suggest new ways of creating campaigns in the future that are more successful? Right? I mean, you do see where this is leading us. The role of the analyst is changing, and I think the value that we have discussed earlier will be much more in being able to not just see what's better and worse, but learn from it and create kind of strategies and new hypotheses on the fly.
I'd just love to expand on that point then, in terms of what implications does that have for the skill set of the modern marketer, and how they need to be. It's no longer, oh, I'm a creative, I just come up with a concept.
Yeah.
Be across the whole spectrum, right? If you're then asking technology to say what would happen if I'd used a different creative concept, what skills do those modern marketers need when it comes to that sort of full circle from concept all the way through to analyzing of results?
Yeah, I would say you will see two effects. You will see one effect of mediocritization, and that's really sad for me to say. I really don't want to belittle, analyst's role, but there will be, analysts that will soon not be obsolete, but their value will drop, because a lot of what has been done in the past, like putting numbers in spreadsheets and putting charts on top of these numbers, this will be more and more automatable, right? So what we will need people with actual subject matter expertise, with the ability to empathize and understand audiences, but then also the analytical ability to understand the effects of certain campaigns that have been run and extrapolate from the results into the future with imagination. So you see, there will be no differentiation anymore between you an analyst or you and creative. You have to do both. If you want to rise above the level of AI powered tools in the future, you have to start an enlightened way of thinking about creating value, and that is challenging, but it will force you to evolve. It will force you to develop new skills where you switch quickly between these two ways of thinking and are able to plan and strategize on the top of what you learn from the analytics.
Moving forward, based on the conversation we've had around effectiveness, optimization, eliciting emotional response, the role of the analyst, if you could set the bar for the industry moving forward of implementing AI technologies, what are the two metrics that you would want people to focus on? What are the two things that you think as an industry we should be focusing on for marketing campaigns moving forward when we're implementing Gen AI technology and as it becomes even more prevalent?
So that's obviously a tricky one because trying to boil it down onto one or two metrics is always a tricky thing. Specifically, as everyone knows this saying, not everything that's relevant can be measured, and not everything that can be measured is relevant. So I think the most important thing is to really be customer centric, understand your audience, and get closer to measuring whether you're relevant or not. And even at this point, I want to differentiate between something that you might find relevant, which is sales, profit, revenue, so to drive up the bottom line, and what the audience is seeing as relevant. Because you might be able with a lot of marketing advertising budget to drive up sales in the short term. But if your product's shit, it will still be shit when people find out that it's shit. So relevance needs to dig deeper. It needs to be a measure of being aligned with consumer needs. And this is something I think that marketers have struggled for a long time. So I would be hard pressed to come up with a metric that is not only sales relevant. Obviously, every marketer will be looking for some kind of a commercially relevant metrics, but that is also capturing the value that the audience is receiving from this transaction. So if I would have to answer it right now, if you would push me, I would probably look into a metric that is a balance of the transaction that's happening between the buyer and the seller, meaning between a brand, a business that is selling a product, and a consumer that is buying it. Or it might be a business and a business, right? So if you look into pricing as perceived value for that transaction, this could be actually a quite nice metric to look into. How much would a buyer be ready to pay for something? He might even pay more than he has to pay for the product in terms of the value that he's getting out of it. Or does he feel ripped off? Even if it's a cheap product, it might still be so worthless that it would not even have warranted that £1 or £5.99 that he paid for it. So to answer your question, hopefully a little bit, I think it needs to be focused on the value capture. It needs to be focused on the value that's generated on the side of the consumer as much as on the value that's generated through the transaction commercially on the brand.
That's a fascinating response. The last question I have, and I think you'll probably understand why I've left this to the end, is the massive elephant in the room, which is regulation. Regulation, safety, and organizational data governance. So, in your mind, as we move forward, will there or is there a need for a global regulatory body? Is it someone, when we think about marketing, is it someone like the IAB that needs to step in and form a regulative body around how AI is used within marketing? And is this something that we expect to see? Or do you think actually the whole point of OpenAI is it's open source so everyone can sort of jump in at any point?
Well, at the moment, it feels a bit Wild West, right? Like, I mean, technology is moving so fast, so every organization is just still exploring, experimenting with it without knowing what's going to happen. And I'm going to be fully transparent. There is no one I know that is smart enough to predict all the ways that, all the effects that AI technology will have on a global or national or even individual level. That's impossible, right? Just recently, I heard someone in a discussion saying, like, you know what? Yeah, of course we need regulation, but we don't need the regulation to kill the technology before it even has a chance to emerge, right? If you think about, a state where, you always have these Luddites in various different tech advanced systems, tech advanced stages where people were rebelling against the trains coming up, where they said, like, it's going to make you insane if you travel with a speed greater than you would be able to travel on horse. You will have hallucinations and panic attacks and whatnot, and even more so obviously with cars. Of course we need safety belts in cars, right? No one wants to die from a car crash. But if you want to be able to think of all the ways that this technology could harm you and try to prevent these potential harms from ever happening, you would have to stop. You would have to stop using any technology, right? So we need to strike a balance between venturing into the unknown and being reasonable enough to impose security systems there where they are warranted without squashing, innovation in its tracks, without kind of destroying the possibility for the next innovation to emerge in the first place.
It's been absolutely fascinating, Thomas, and I would love to do part two of this conversation because I think there's so many things we can explore. One of the things I've loved is your passion and energy for this emerging period that we're going into as marketers and humanity. It seems it's exciting and it seems that we are at the forefront of something different. But is there anything or any message you would just sort of like to leave to our audience?
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm extremely grateful to be able to be in touch with intelligent people like yourself, with a lot of other smart and enthusiastic partners, because this is a technology too big to be taken alone by anyone. And also, I think it is so exciting to be part of this transformation in a time where the way that AI, the way that AI is smart right now is probably the least that it ever will be. So it will only get more intelligent from here. And I don't think in any way that is something that we should be afraid of, right? Normally, there is a good correlation between things getting better with people being more intelligent, making more intelligent decisions. Just don't assume that this is an automatic conveyor belt into the future that is, just a golden future where you don't have to do anything. The process involves personal effort and cognitive use of your own brain, right? Don't assume that this is just happening automatically. Innovation always requires people to get involved.
Brilliant. And with that, I extend my sincere thanks to you for your time.
Thank you, JJ. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.